Big changes afoot in Seattle with the Seahawks. Frankly, as they needed to be. Because when you look at this team, they're the dynasty that never was. They're the team that won one Super Bowl that should have at least won two, if not potentially three or more. But I think everybody agrees that after that Super Bowl loss and the fashion that it happened against the New England Patriots, the locker room, the team was just never, ever the same. There was an increasing, growing rift between the defense and some of the members of the defense and the offense, and specifically Russell Wilson and all of that. And knowing that 2017, they kind of petered out when they had made a deal to bring in Sheldon Richardson and give up a second-round pick, trying to say, hey, we're taking one last chance to try and go all in here, and it didn't pan out. You had to know if head coach Pete Carroll and or general manager John Schneider weren't going to leave or be shown the door, that there were going to be some major changes to this roster. Because that locker room environment, specifically on the defensive side of the ball, feels like had gotten a little bit toxic. And it's not just due to talking about politics or talking about this. It's a variety of anything and everything. And it kind of feels like similar to what the tail end of Pete Carroll's run at USC felt like, where the players were kind of empowered too much and the coaches had kind of lost a little bit of control and the message wasn't quite sinking in the same. And it feels like they're trying to all get off the ship before it totally sinks. Now, Pete Carroll ultimately left UFC before the ship really sank behind him. But in this case, he dumped some of the players overboard. And you look at it, it's crazy to think about. The Seahawks team, Michael Bennett's gone. Richard Sherman's gone. Cam Chancellor retired. Jimmy Graham's gone. Paul Richardson's gone. But specifically, you look at that defense. And those three key cogs to that Legion of Boom defense, starting with Sherman and Chancellor, and then, of course, Michael Bennett, one of the better free agent signings that we've seen in some time. When you think about it, Michael Bennett, they brought in originally, a 1 year, $5 million, or 2 year, $10 million contract. Man, he was worth every penny of that and more, even when they gave him the big extension afterwards. And it's just going to feel so different watching this team this year. But it had to happen. Their time, the way they were currently constructed, was over. And all that was going to happen, if you continue to hang on to that dream and that hope that they could piece it together and figure it out, was you were going to have a bad result and there were going to be even more hurt feelings and emotions and ill will demonstrated by all parties. It's just the way it is. So the Seahawks now are in a position where you've got the franchise elite quarterback, but you've got to plug in a lot of holes in a lot of other places. It's going to be a vastly different looking Seahawks team in 2018. And they didn't do a lot in free agency because they just didn't have a lot of salary cap space. They bring in guys like Barkevious Mingo and Brandon Marshall. How much are those guys really going to contribute? I don't know. Maybe Marshall can contribute opposite Doug Baldwin as the second option in that passing game. Maybe Mingo can get into that system and play a Bruce Irvin type of role. But let's be real here. The Patriots brought him in, and they were okay with letting him go. That should tell you something. And when you look at the draft, this is a team that didn't have a second-round pick, missing a couple of picks. Then they shocked a lot of people, understandably so, by trading down and then drafting Rashad Penny, the running back from San Diego State. Look, I like Penny quite a bit. I was very surprised to see them take him in this spot. But they did. But I can also say that Penny potentially could fill a very big void in this offense. Because once beast mode was no longer beast mode, and once beast mode was gone, this offense and the entire Seahawks team just was different, and they were never, ever the same. So with Penny, not necessarily being beast mode, but he can be a physical between the tackles type of runner. He could be a consistent on-the-ground threat for this team. It will help significantly as they transition away from the dominant defense that they had these past several years. And they're going to need him to do so. But it's kind of fitting for the Seahawks, like in recent years, they've overdrafted a lot of guys. Like, just because you like them doesn't mean you have to take them as high as you take them. There is something to be said about understanding other teams' views on players and understanding the draft board as a whole. Now, granted, you could say it doesn't matter we'll take a guy that everybody else grades as a 7th rounder. If we got a first round grade on him, we'll take him in the first round. If he pans out, yeah, it does not matter. But if he doesn't pan out, you look like a jackass. And over the past few years, we've seen this with Schneider several times, taking guys way too high, and it doesn't pan out. So hope that's not the case with Rashad Penny. Some of the players that they took on day 3 should be expected defensively to make an impact. That's a good thing for them. There are opportunities. Trey Flowers, who played safety at Oklahoma State, now he's going to be starting the season as a corner. We'll see how that goes. I'm excited for that. And then obviously excited for my boy Shaquem Griffin being able to get the week 1 started outside linebacker. This is the type of kid you want to root for. This is the type of kid that you'll want to succeed. This is the type of kid who plays with an energy and enthusiasm and the love for the game and a passion and a hustle that is infectious to those around him. Not like Magic Johnson HIV infectious, but infectious in a good way. The type of infection that you don't mind having shared with you. But I'm so excited just to see Shaquem Griffin play and see what he can do. Because I had a pretty high grade on him in the draft, and be able to see him not only get drafted, but get drafted into a great situation for him to play alongside his twin brother in Seattle. Playing for a coach like Pete Carroll, who's not afraid to take chances and take risks, and then going to a system that fits him really, really well, and being able to play and being able to now start right away as a rookie, that's really exciting. It's an awesome kick-ass story that I hope we get to see play out throughout the course of the season. Now, when you look at this team, as much as everybody's going to focus on Michael Bennett being gone, Sherman being gone, Chancellor being gone, trying to trade Earl Thomas, but ultimately he's still there, you still have some notable players there. Russell Wilson, like I said, is a franchise quarterback. He's an elite guy. You've won a championship with him. You made it to 2 straight Super Bowls with him. And now you're in that natural transition period where the team and focus becomes more on the offense and Russell Wilson than it does on the defense. And you've got Doug Baldwin in the mix. He's a hell of a wide receiver. Not an elite guy, but really, really good. Another good story. Former undrafted player that became something in the league. Then on defense, you've got Bobby Wagner, arguably the best middle linebacker in football. Great in coverage especially. And then you've still got Earl Thomas back there in the secondary, at least for this year. So you've got some notable players on both sides of the ball. And where I talked about with the Cardinals, they've got some stars and some real studs, but not in the place that matters the most, quarterback. The Seahawks have some still notable players, stars and studs, and they've got the right player at quarterback. So while I have concerns about the running game and how much Rashad Penny is going to make a difference, I have concerns still about the offensive line, Dwayne Brown trade or not. Sorry, their offensive line to me is still a weakness. I have some concerns about where the pass rush is going to come from outside of Frank Clark. I have some major concerns about the secondary and the youth and lack of experienced talent back there. There's still something about this team that says, with the changing dynamics of it, the team could be different, but that doesn't necessarily automatically make it bad. In some cases, even with the great players that were gone from the organization, it could be addition by subtraction. Now, when you want to talk about the Seahawks, you're going to start to figure them out pretty quickly here in September because the first 4 games, 3 of the first 4 on the road. They go to Denver, then to Chicago, host Dallas, go to Arizona. All 4 of those, in theory, can be winnable games, even though 3 of the 4 of them are on the road. If the Eagles can find a way to go 2-2, even maybe 3-1, then they've at least got some chance at belief that this doesn't have to be a totally lost season, and it doesn't necessarily have to be. But they need to get in some of those kicks and those lumps now because as you get towards the end of the season, that's when the schedule toughens up significantly. You got the Chargers at home, but then you go to the Rams, you host Green Bay, to Carolina, host San Francisco, host Minnesota, go to San Francisco, host Kansas City. So that's an 8-week stretch, 5 of those games at home, but none of those opponents are what you would call Cupcake City. So it could be an example of early on in the year, the Seahawks start off pretty well, take advantage of that early schedule, or maybe they don't. But then the second half of the year is where they could struggle and things could kind of come apart at the seams a little bit. I don't think the Seahawks are going to be a complete and total disaster this year, but I do think playoffs is a pretty big ask. And if this team is in playoff contention, and if this team makes the playoffs, it's probably because Russell Wilson had the best year of his career. And if this team, and the way it is constructed, makes the playoffs, then Russell Wilson probably has to be the league's MVP, doesn't he? I look at them right now, and I think they're a 7-9 team. They'll finish third in the division, and then you start looking forward to building that team truly around Russell Wilson in 2019 and beyond.